Hi everyone, my name is Eva. I'm a holistic health consultant, and today I wanted to bring to you a beautiful story and an era that is not talked about more frequently. I feel it's just as important and meaningful as the era of Atlantis. The information I found here that I'll be sharing with you, found generally on the internet, and I'll be bringing to you upcoming videos with more information from books I found on this topic. I wanted to share with you this topic so that you would know what kind of information we would cover when working with me. That being said, in the upcoming videos, I'll be sharing information about this era of Lemuria that is more relevant to your life. The purpose of bringing up Lemuria is to revive the era of love, innocence, and safety, a time where we lived in peace, in protection, and loved one another. Presently, more than ever, this story is needed to bring to light a focus to improve our lives in a more positive aspect through love, instead of giving our focus to other non-appealing things that will keep us all in low vibration. The Lemurian timeline makes me think of the Brazilian culture, where I feel they have decoded the best way of living, which is by embracing the bad times and try to laugh through our silly human mistakes and not dwell in sadness. Brazilians are very good at laughing about how silly it is to stay in a low vibrational state, which includes being sad, mad, or unforgiving. Lemuria was in the Pacific Ocean and existed around the same period of time as Atlantis, or prior to that, which is the Atlantean era. The timeline in Lemuria, and I'll just read to you what is listed here on the internet. The timeline of Lemuria, as envisioned in theosophical traditions, places it as a period following the Hyperborean period and preceding the Atlantean era. While specific dates are not definitively set, it is generally linked to the Mesozoic era, roughly 252.2 to 66 million years ago. The earliest Lemurian period might even extend back to around 2.5 billion years ago, according to some interpretations. So the Lemurian era was a time of peace and love, and it was an enormous continent which spanned all the way from Alaska across the ocean to the Asian to Asia, and then all the way down along the coast of Australia. So the Lemurian era embodied the woman's energy, which was highly dominant. Lemuria was the first civilization that had consciousness on Earth. It was the first civilization to have materialistic human body, the first to create individuality. Lemuria had lots of volcanoes. There was an enormous volcano in the center of what we know now to be Hawaii, which was the center of Lemuria, in Mauna Loa specifically. This volcano brought life to the continent. From within the volcano, it generated life, where earth and water the sea, could rise with the energy a lot like the Kundalini, an awakening of the earth. And what I'll do is also share to you this specific definition of Kundalini so that you have an understanding of what that is. Kundalini refers to a dormant energy, also known as a life force or primal energy, believed to be located at the base of the spine. The Kundalini yoga, this energy is awakened and guided upwards through the body's energy centers called chakras. The awakening of Kundalini is believed to lead to spiritual enlightenment and transformative experiences. During this era, people's minds had not been tampered with. They could all remember their past lives, exactly like extracting information from the Akashic records. And for those of you who don't know what the Akashic records, I've also taken the time to find that on the internet for a more better definition. Akashic records, the definition that I found on the internet is in spiritual and metaphysical belief systems, the Akashic records are believed to be a vast universal library or database containing the memories, thoughts, and experiences of every soul throughout time. They are seen as a source of information about past lives, potential futures, and one's soul's journey. Lemurians were all much smaller humans like the indigenous people. Their skin color was more yellow and orange and red tint. Now this part is anecdotal, really has to do with myself so that you get a better sense of who I am and how I identify with this Lemurian era. So that's why, so my skin color is a little bit more, has like an undertone of orange and yellow, and that's why I feel more creative. My sacral chakra is, I guess, more dominant in orange, and I'm also mixed. So I'm pretty sure, I can't be absolutely sure, but I feel that in my ancestry on my indigenous or Mayan side, Mayan culture, I feel like I may have been an architect for the Mayan culture. I love architecture. And apparently, I actually learned this while I was walking through a museum and I read this, or I may have seen a documentary about the Mayan history where the Mayans who were chosen to be architects were the right-hand person to the king or queen during that Mayan era. They held an extremely important position because they were laying down the blueprint for the city being created. And then on the other hand, I feel like I've lived as a European royal on my grandfather's side. On my mother's side, so I'll reread that to you. My grandfather on my mom's side has family members in Guatemala who are blonde and blue-eyed, and I believe I have ancestry from Sweden or one of the other Scandinavian countries. And how do I know this? Because my mother showed me pictures of them when she went to visit them recently. So they very much, actually, their features are mixed. They have big foreheads, a lot like the Scandinavians, and their nose is a little bit pointier as far as being more European, and some of them are smaller. Some of my aunts have smaller noses, and they're shaped more like a European nose as opposed to indigenous, which is, I guess, a little wider on the sides, and it has a point but going downwards. And so I guess the features of the people that I saw, or my mother's cousins, they had big foreheads, blue eyes, blonde hair, and their nose was a little bit different, but everything else generally is the same, and maybe their jawline is a little bit more square. So that's the only difference. Where am I here? And, I've also lived quite the opposite, more coming from more humble beginnings. I'm most comfortable with people who are genuine. That's where I feel most comfortable, where it's not necessary to feel competitive or that anything feels contrived. The woman's energy was more abundant than that of the man's during the Lemurian era. Humans have changed and shaped depending on how much sun we've been exposed to. And again, here I'm going to share something that is, I feel, maybe anecdotal, but I feel like I've also heard this from scientists. Exactly why in Scandinavia our people are more like albinos in a nice way, I guess you could say, all fair skin, because they're the majority of the year there's no sun, so their eyes have to be lighter to adapt to their surroundings and be able to see better. People with brown eyes is said to have a better target to hunt, and because the sun does not bother their eyesight as much. People with lighter eyes have to protect their eyes with sunglasses because the reflection of the sun can be too powerful, and their eye color can't handle the intensity or the brightness in their eyes. So all of this, I feel like I've picked up through listening to several scientists. The people of Lemuria were cognitively mature creatures, and they were still in the process of differentiating each other with different objects and ideas. They were like little innocent children, able to communicate with angels and nature itself, mentally and emotionally. They were all similar to the age of an 18-year-old. During Lemuria, they had a big desire to love everyone and one another. The Lemurians lived in big communities, and it was a simple life, and no one fought each other. They were all able to see each other's auras before we all had egos. The mentality was very different. During the Lemurian time, women's characteristics were about being creative and to love, unlike a masculine characteristic, to put things into action, to push forward, to put things in order and structure. The people of Lemuria all felt like they were still living in a dreamlike state. Everything was more organic. It was a time of happiness, and the time was more attached to magic. There was no real order in Lemuria, and it was more about mythology and astrology and being able to move energy with their minds and hands. It was a mystical time. It was a shamanic time with lots of vegetation. Lemurians had a vibration of love. People lived off the herbs and healed themselves using natural substances found in their surroundings. Reiki was practiced to heal. Women dominated what would happen in society. The feminine energy was awake during the era of Lemuria, and we're able to tap into mystical energy faster than a male. Closer to our timeline, there are a couple of examples of male figures who did have a good balance of both male and female energies. There were Jesus and the Buddha, who were both males and had a good balance of feminine and male energies. During Lemuria, males were the force of the external world and women were the force of the internal world. There was no karma during this era because it was a new era. During Lemurian time, the priesthood was started by a woman and always starts from the feminine energy. An oracle to be translated an oracle to be a translator of the cosmic universe of God was the woman. It was considered absurd for only male counterparts to be able to communicate with God and give the word of God. It's not something that was practiced. Male dominance in the timeline closer to now is about, so they speculate or they say, it's not for sure, but this is just anecdotal, an idea. They're saying that male dominance in the timeline closer to now is about controlling the woman and controlling people because they have distanced themselves from the feminine energy. Everything can be explained in theory but not put into practice. It's a mental game and it's a shadow that we are in, supposedly. I feel that we have surpassed that, and for some males they are able to tap into the feminine energy and are able to listen to everyone just as equally as they are, as women are able to. You need to have feminine energy awake, otherwise, again, this is what I found on the internet, it's manipulation in any religion. Being able to channel and work with the moon was absolutely divine. You ask higher levels of consciousness to help you, to come down and help you learn from them. That was the Lemurian areas, or they actually asked higher levels of consciousness. So I'm thinking angels is what would come down and help you with, questions or to solve problems. The people of Lemuria came from the Pleiades. Pleiades can be explained in a different video. They were beings from a cluster of stars around 2330 BC. There was no karma. There was no disease during the Lemurian time. It was a very innocent time where Lemurian people were learning about what tears were. They were very pure beings during Lemuria, and they also learned about fire. They would ask themselves questions about why the fire looked the way it did, by the different type of flames it generated. They were still in an infant-like state. Lemurians let things flow easily, and they trusted things, and they let the cosmos guide them. Sometimes Lemurians were late for things because they were free spirits. They were learning what an ego was. They learned about what structure was, and there were some who were resistant to this as far as structure and having rules in place. There were women priests who knew how to move the cosmos and earth and knew everything, just like oracles. The wisdom of Lemuria was from love. The love was cosmic and innocent and straight from the heart. People were whimsical and really very beautiful in the way that they would view things like they were seeing it for the first time, really treating things with kindness, very connected to the spirit world. They lived from their imagination and unplanned life, and through unconditional love. The people of Lemuria and us as humans forgave quickly to live in peace.